Alrighty. If I'm all good to go and I can be heard, I will take the floor. Alrighty. Hi, everybody. My name is Kaylin or Gil, and this is my first ever Rock Game Dev talk, going viral and how to keep your followers once you have them. As a small disclaimer, the tips in this talk will not 100% guarantee that you're going to leave here today and get 100,000 followers overnight. If I could do that, I would be a wizard and also be making a lot more money. But I will get you on the right track to building a steady following on the platform of your choosing. I am a little bit more used to giving talks in front of rooms of people and seeing faces and reactions, so forgive me if I am a tad awkward with the digital presentation here. Who am I? Why should you trust a single thing that I'm saying throughout this? Great question. I also asked myself that question a lot while putting together this presentation. As was said, hi, I'm Kaylin. I'm a former senior production and digital marketing intern and a current strategy manager at a company here in Rochester called We the Hobby that deals primarily with sports cards, but also dabbles in Pokemon and Magic. And I also have my master's degree in game design and development and a minor in psychology. But most people know me online by my account name Yellow Star Child, which is what I'm here to talk about today. Since I started my main account at the tail end of 2020, as you've heard, I've gained a lot of followers, a lot of likes, a lot of views, numbers that are in the millions. Um, which that's a lot. That's a big number. But it didn't happen overnight. So I do want to give you a little bit of a timeline of how I got to that point. My lessons for today's talk don't come from marketing classes and textbooks. They come specifically from my lived experience and all of the ups and downs that are involved in that. I've never taken a marketing class, but I have picked up a few marketing textbooks, and I frankly disagree with some of the things that I read. What I've lived in my day to day life is not what I read in that textbook. So to start out, I spent my middle and high school years running many fan accounts on Instagram for games and characters that I liked, most of which sat around a 300 to 500 follower count. Nothing too crazy, but it was my first taste of a social media presence, and I was absolutely hooked at the thought of having an online community of my own. I then started a TikTok account as the app rose to popularity in around 2018 and then going into 2020. That account gained about 7,000 followers. It was full of COVID era content, shenanigans, and figuring out who I was as a late stage teenager. My most popular video was of me finding an Uncrustables with the crust on it, so it was truly the pinnacle of intellectually stimulating content, as I'm sure you noticed. Please don't attempt to find that account. It's buried for reasons, and I am the only one who's allowed to see and cringe at its contents now. I then started a new TikTok account after that for my cosplays to keep it separate from my personal account. This account gained a whopping 4 followers before I gave up on it in a few months. Yes, that was truly my pride and joy of an account. Then came Halloween of my freshman year of college. I had thrown together a costume in about 3 days prior to Halloween for the hit game Among Us. I'm sure we all remember how big that was during the pandemic. And I happened to stumble upon some other people on campus who were also dressed in their own Among Us costumes. I filmed my first video in my dorm room while getting ready, and my second at 3 a.m. in the basement of one of our college buildings with someone I had met that same day. I, to this day, do not know what their name was. Um, I determined that since my costume hid my face, I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to stay faceless and to theme my account around the costume. I was so sure that I was going to go viral with it. And thus, Yellow Star Child was born. I posted the videos, I went to bed. Lightning had struck, and I had about 6,000 followers in the morning. By the end of that same day, I had around 30,000. I rushed to edit more videos, get them up. I dragged that random stranger I met back out to film more videos, and in the coming month, I had reached 300,000 followers with consistent posting. I then spent the next months filming, editing, posting every few days, and managed to grow my account to 1 million followers, where I finally started shifting my content to broader anime, gaming, and nerd related content. As I worked towards completing my master's, I decided to take a break from my account to focus on my studies, and I stepped away from everything. Even so, I was still reached out to by We the Hobby in my latter college years, where I took up a role as a senior production and digital marketing intern to help them overhaul their social media presence and sales. As you can see from the statistics on the right hand side of the screen, I was at least somewhat effective in my role there. However, imposter syndrome definitely reared its head during my internship. I doubted my abilities after being away from my account for so long, so I started a new account with the goal of seeing how many followers I could accumulate in 48 hours. Just a personal little challenge. And I ended up with the account you see on the bottom left, with around 10,000 followers and a video with over a million views as a result. That helped me kind of prove to myself that I think I do know what I'm doing. And that's actually when I started giving talks at conventions and things like this. Um, from there, I wrapped up my master's degree. I rejoined the We the Hobby team as a full time member as a strategy manager. And then I also started exploring contract work where I worked with small business and teams for their own social media presence and analytic analysis, which leads us to where I am now. Whew, that's a lot about me. So let's get into the lessons that I learned from all of that over the years and how you can apply said lessons to your own content growth and your own projects. I'm going to be separating this talk into three parts: reach, retain, and return. The three R's. Ooh, fun. Um, these are three stages that you're going to be constantly cycling through as a social media manager, or even if you don't want to call yourself that, just someone who handles the social media of either yourself or of a company. The beginners often find themselves stuck in this first section, so that's where I'm going to be spending a vast majority of the time today because it is the scariest and it is typically the hardest to get out of cyclically. I'm going to be stopping in between each of these sections to take questions. So if you have questions that are related to this section, you can ask them then, or you can hold on to it and we'll do more Q&A at the end. But we're going to be talking about gaining a new audience, keeping that audience engaged, and then hopefully being able to turn that audience into fans, players, sales, whatever you would consider your return. I know some people don't work in content that is monetary, so I want to also acknowledge that because that is the realm that I'm in. I don't personally work in monetized content, but some people do, and that's why some people are here. So I did want to make sure that we touched on it. First question most people ask is, how do I get people to discover my account or my product? Great question. We're going to have to get more specific than that, though. Are you wanting to do it organically, or do you want to do it through paid content like ads? Neither is a wrong approach, but they do have very different vibes and steps. And I think that people don't tend to spend a lot of time looking at the differences between them and deciding which is correct for them in that moment. Organically, you're going to have to rely on something called the algorithm. Ooh, scary buzzword. Um, what many deem a cruel mistress is actually just a lot of math behind the scenes, and every one of your favorite social media platforms, you can use it to your advantage. It's there, and it's there to help you more than it is to harm you. You'll often hear people blame the algorithm for when their videos don't do well, but it's also to blame when your videos do go well, so it's not exactly the evil thing that people make it out to be. At its core, it's math, it's spreadsheets, and it's not entirely calculable, but it is more predictable than people think. You put a little bit of time into it. I'll get more into analyzing analytics in this presentation, so I'll put a pin in that one because it will take a second to get through. That is more than people seem to think it is. So talking about paid ads or paid promotions, this is the fast track way if you want to take this route. Most social media platforms have a way to pay to make your posts be more visible. It's a great option if you're on a time budget, but not a monetary budget, such as you're trying to push a game for release, you're trying to lock people in before a sale, or whatever other reason you might have for needing to get this in front of people extremely quickly. It's not entirely reliable long term. It's usually the hype surrounding a post dies off when you stop putting money into it. Um, but it's not a horrible way to get your foot in the door. Some of those people that you pull in through the promotion are still going to stick around and could potentially be turned into more organic fans over time. But if you're looking for long-term sustained growth, it's not usually the way to go. I personally never got into doing paid advertisements or content, both in my personal and my professional work, just because I knew that long term it is more sustainable to build an organic following with organic engagements, even though it's so much harder. But there are 100% times when it is a good idea for a company or an individual to use paid promotions for their materials. You just have to look at what your goals are and to sit down and make that pros and cons list and figure out what your end goal really is. Are you trying to get a quick turnaround, or are you trying to build something that lasts longer and is more sustainable from there? Um, Next up is casting a wide net. Don't go fishing in parking lot puddles. As you can see on the side, there's a lovely picture of a fish in a parking lot that I had to find on Google Images. You'd be surprised how many pictures there are on Google Images of fish in a parking lot. But what I mean by this is that people who have a product that is very niche or is going to be targeting a very, very specific demographic of people, please do not just make your content for those people. If your game is meant for those people, they will find it. Don't worry, they will get to you at some point in this wider net that you are casting. But what's going to end up happening is if you throw your net into parking lot puddles, there's not a lot of fish in there. You're not going to get as big of a return on the content that you're putting out. By casting a net into a pond, aka a wider audience, by getting a little bit more general with your content, you're going to end up getting a lot more fish that you did not initially intend to. It's not a bad thing to have. I first came up with this phrase when I was working with We the Hobby as an intern, where because a primary focus of the company is on sports cards, all of the content they were putting out was very directly about the breaking of sports cards. Obviously, to get the sales they wanted, they had to target people who want to buy sports cards. However, this is a parking lot puddle mentality. Instead of just focusing their content on sports cards, which was proving a rather stagnant yield in views and followers, we transitioned to the route of interspersing content that focused on sports as a whole and cards as a whole. You wouldn't believe it, but that content tended to perform better because it reached a broader audience that the algorithm pushed it to, because more people, far more people, are out there interacting with just sports content or just cards content than there are people who are specifically going to fit in that center of the Venn diagram of sports cards. If you're casting a big net, you're going to catch people who are in both sides of a Venn diagram and not necessarily in the middle that you're specifically looking for. It then becomes your job to make content that's intriguing and entertaining enough to pull those new fish into that center. By doing that, you're creating loyal fans because you're going to be one of their first experiences in that center of the circle. We would see comments like that all the time at We the Hobby, where people would talk about, like, oh, I played baseball as a kid and I was really into Pokemon, but I didn't know there was surrounding the lap of sports trading cards. Or I've collected for years, but they've sat in a basement and I didn't know it was so social till I watched your videos, and now I'm going to stop by in the store. And now, because we're the company to open that gateway for them, they are a loyal customer. That leads us into conversion versus fan snatching. That's probably some really weird vocab words, and I can't say they're from something, they're just what I happen to call them. When I say conversion versus fan snatching, I mean content targeting people who are already in your target audience and shared competitors, or is it aiming for people who don't know that they're in your target audience yet? That might sound a little bit confusing, but let me give an example. So let's say your game is something like Overcooked. That one's pretty popular. One option is to promote your game directly that way and say, hey, do you like Overcooked? Are you in these fan spaces where people are talking about it playing Overcooked? Well, you should come play our game because we're like Overcooked. That is what I would constitute as fan snatching. And that's not to say it's bad or any negative connotation with the word snatching, but you're taking people that already have something that they're dedicated to, that they're already putting time into, that they already have a connection with. And it's usually a lot harder to get those people to leave their thing to come to yours. So you're going to have to work twice as hard to convince that specific group of people. Versus if you target your content towards, hey, are you bored sitting around with your friends and you're looking for something to do and board games just aren't working anymore and you want to yell at your friends? Well, why don't you try out our game? While beating around the bush, and it's kind of the same thing, you're going to end up getting a lot of people who don't know what Overcooked is or have never played Overcooked or a game like it, who are like, yeah, that sounds cool. I would like that. And then they start playing your game. Combining that approach with wide net, and you get conversion, or bringing people in who aren't already fans of your specific niche, or they don't have a game within your specific niche that they're already dedicated to. Now, one of these is not inherently better than the other. Both of these are completely valid, and honestly, you should be using both of them interchangeably. If you're absolutely brand new to starting out, like you have nothing, I would suggest going more fan snatching route, where you're just trying to get talk generating about your content, get people interacting with it. And then once you have a little bit of an establishment for yourself, you could start making some posts you have something sturdy for people to land on, basically. You could start going that conversion route where you have made yourself a safe and welcoming space for people to come in and learn about the interesting thing that you're pushing. Next, I want to talk about analytics, the big beast. Essentially, every social media app has a built in way to view analytics for content creators, and it is the holy grail tool that you should be using. You should be tracking interactions with your posts. You should be tracking the comments, the likes, the shares. Anything that that algorithm tab is going to give you is going to be a gold mine of information for informing your next steps. However, the shortcoming that I often see is that a lot of people just stop on that page. They don't do any extra work themselves. They see the number and it says plus or minus, oh, you're up 20, you're down 20, and they go, oh, that's great, or oh, that sucks. And then they don't really know what to do with that information once they see it. It's very reactive and not proactive. I personally, I love Excel sheets. I work with Excel sheets in my day to day life. You can ask my friends. I use them for anything and everything to the point where it's kind of a problem. I love them. But that aside, they are an extremely helpful tool for turning the analytics that your respective app gives you into actionable items for your product or your company. One of the most common questions I receive when I do talks like this is how often should I be posting? And my response is always yes. You can go online and you can look up and you can see content creators telling you the exact amount of days posting, what times you should be posting, and generally those are good guidelines to get started, but the exact answer to that question is only going to come from your own analytics and from trial and error. For my personal account, I found the most successful videos is whenever I posted one time every 3 to 9 days. When I was working at We the Hobby, I determined that we performed best statistically when we posted 3 times a day. When we started posting 3 times a day, spaced out across the day, we saw immediate improvements from them previously posting 9 times a day. We then played with what times we would post because we had percentages of our viewers that were spread across time zones and countries. If we posted too early in the morning Easter time, there was no way anybody on the web to see it in the first few hours because it would be after they've already started work or school, or maybe they're not even up in the morning. They won't be looking at their phone for the next handful of hours if we waited too long. So we had to take into consideration little things like that. And you should be taking those things into consideration about your audience and use that to guide your initial trial and error runs when you're posting time, frequencies, and things like that. Beyond that, it's important to look at the analytics of the app that you're on itself, not just your own content. Look for trending hashtags, trending audios, if available for the platform. This is one of the most commonly used pieces of advice. This is not new, revolutionary, groundbreaking stuff for these sorts of talks, but it genuinely makes a world of difference to pay attention to that sort of thing. TikTok, for example, has a really cool site that the company themselves put out that lets you see the trend analytics for individual hashtags and audios. You can see when numbers start to spike, and if you catch them early, you could be on a first wave of a trend before it actually becomes big. You can also get really good at reading when things are artificially inflated or are just temporary. It also saves you from the awkward, oh, I swear this is trending right now. I'm seeing it all over my feed, but it turns out your feed's actually like a few weeks behind and the trend is already dying. And now you're putting all this time and effort into making something that's not going to be done until the trend's basically dead. You want to avoid that. My final point on Reach is going to be a bit of a list of general advice that I have for this. It's not exactly specific skills that you need to practice, but I find them to be important things to keep in mind. Firstly, you cannot be afraid to be silly. Humor is what drives a large portion of social media as it today. People often use it as an escape from everything else that is happening around them, and they go there to be entertained. When consulting on projects, I very commonly take themselves and their products way too seriously. Yes, this is their livelihood. Yes, this is your passion project, but also it's a game. This is specifically talked about products that are within the gaming space. Show me fun. Show me whimsy. Make me feel good from watching your content, and I can safely assume that your product is feel the same. For example, Pine Sol.
I clean so deep I got out all my anger. OMG, da pain.
This is beautiful.
I clean so deep I'm now fun to be around again. OMG, da pain. I clean so deep I started to cry cause I'm working through some things. OMG, free therapy. I clean so deep that dirt now fears me. OMG, da
So while that might be a little much for your intended product, I saw this for the first time and sat there absolutely baffled for quite a few minutes. And then I decided I really wanted to go get Pine-Sol and clean my. So it definitely did something right. Um, but like Pine-Sol, don't be afraid to get out there, get a little weird, be a little silly. It tends to reach the right audiences. Know what type of content your platform prioritizes. We're in a shifting and changing age, and apps very frequently like to change what type of content they're actively trying to push. TikTok, for example, used to prioritize videos that were 15 seconds or less. Um, Tended to not like videos that were over that. Nowadays, they prioritize videos that are longer just as much because it gets people to stay on the app longer. YouTube, a platform originally intended just for long form content, really now prioritizes their shorts for short form content. Um, so know which platform uses what and post accordingly. Speaking of, cross post when you can. Cross posting is taking a single piece of content and posting it to multiple different platforms, either in the exact same way or edited versions of it. You save a lot of time by doing this in the long run, but a lot of people do it wrong because they don't consider the last point, and sometimes their formatting isn't the best suited for all other platforms. Might take you a little bit of extra time to make the content fit multiple platforms, but it tends to be worth it because it looks like you spent the time to make that for the specific platform, even if you really didn't put that much time into it. Long form content can always be turned into short content, sometimes multiple pieces of short form content, which means that it's usually worth the time to put together long form content to then get a bunch of short form content out of it if you are, limited in your time or manpower that you can be putting into your social media. Make sure you know the gimmicks of your respective platform. Every single platform has their golden child or the thing that gets a lot of emphasis because it sets them apart in their eyes, even if half of them are really just clones of each other. One of the biggest ones I've seen recently was when Blue Sky started picking up a lot of people, didn't know starter packs existed or how to become a part of them. Essentially, what they are is just lists of people to follow. People would put together these groups using one of the in-app tools, and with a single click, you could follow everybody under a certain group, such as indie game devs. If you asked to be added to that starter list, people could click one button and follow 100 indie game devs. And when you're starting out on a platform and trying to build your For You page in your feed, great option, really simple option. We did that with one of our personal projects and skyrocketed to hundreds of followers very quickly because of our involvement in starter packs. Um, Finally, reach out to community figures. This could be content creators within the same space. This could be streamers, cosplayer, artists, other game devs. Look for partnerships, look for ways to connect with other people's established communities and use that to your advantage. We're all in this together, and more often than not, people are going to respond to you with a smile, even if it's a no and a smile, than they are going to turn you away harshly. And you never know. Worst they could say is no. So I would recommend reaching out to people if you can. This will be the break for reach before we move into retention. So if there are any questions in the chat, I can take those now. If not, we'll keep on trucking. Of course. Give people just a couple of moments to type if necessary before we keep moving. In my brain, I'm just replaying the Pine-Sol ad though. All right, not seeing any questions, so we're gonna keep moving. We can always circle back around to some stuff at the end if need be. Retention. What do you do once you have followers and fans? And how do you make them stick around? Let me ease your worries slightly. The hardest part is over. Fishing analogies aside of, hooking and reeling in and whatnot, the hardest part is getting people to find your stuff and to follow you in the first place. Once you have that, I consider that to be the crest of the hill. Um, Lots of people will just stick around. Some of them might not even remember why they followed you, but they're still here and they're still enjoying your content. And Sure, why not? Um, but obviously, you're going to want to be active. You're going to want to be posting at least somewhat frequently. You don't want people to think that you've gone dark or abandoned your project or anything like that. One of the best ways to do this, especially if you're in a lull where you don't have new content to post, is interacting with people. You should be replying to every comment you can. You should be replying to every direct message you can. You should be replying to every mention you can. I think you're getting the theme of this here. If people are interacting with you, you should be giving them to the time to interact back with them. And when you aren't getting comments or direct messages or mentions, go to other people's pages. Find out what they're doing on their projects. Comment. Get your name out there. Get people talking about it and become a prominent name in other people's communities, especially ones that overlap with your own. And usually that circles back to you in a positive way. You can hold contests, rewards for loyal fans who have stuck around. This can be behind the scenes content. This could be giveaways, could be free Steam keys. There's lots of ways that you could go about this that are financially friendly for smaller projects. And they usually mean a lot to super fans. And they can even make some super fans. You don't necessarily need to put a whole ton of money into something like this for it to be super meaningful. For example, I got $3 worth of felt from Michael's Craft Store, and I made a plushie for one of my costumes. Thousands of people wanted to learn how to make this very poorly crafted little plushie that I made by sitting on the floor and hand sewing at 4 in the morning. And something like that can very easily be turned into a giveaway or turned into more content of how do you make these things. Um, you got to get creative sometimes. But that's part of the fun of crafting your presence on social media is getting to carve out that space for your own voice and become known for those quirky little things that you do. Honestly, one of the biggest parts of retention is just making people feel valued for their time and their presence. We only have so many hours in a day, and even fewer of those hours that we get to relax and do with them what we want. So if people are taking those hours out of their day to interact with your content or your games or your posts, you should be giving them your time of day to acknowledge that and to build those connections with them. Learn the names of your most loyal fans and playtesters. Acknowledge them when you see them in the comments or in the live streams or in your Discord. Post talks in your Discord channels where you let people ask the devs questions or submit fan art. Let people feel like they have an importance to this thing that they're sinking time into, and it usually tends to keep people around more than anything else. I will now pause again for questions on retention. This one's a little bit shorter, but to keep us moving. A couple of people are typing, so I'll give them a moment for that. Someone did say, but I love the comments. Finally, another video. I've been waiting. I do agree. That is very nice to be feeling that. But it's even better when you don't have to make people wait for it. And they know that you're going to be posting every however many days and they're excited for it. They know you post on Fridays. They know you post on Wednesdays. So Wednesdays they're checking their phone, they're looking, like I want to see the news. Being proactive, not reactive. uh, Sign Creates Arts asks, how do you format replies to all comments when many of the comments don't necessarily have a lot of substance to reply to? Oh boy, I get a lot of those. I definitely have faced my fair share of those. On my most popular video that sits at about 11.9 million views right now, even though it was posted 5 years ago, I still get comments daily on that post, and I really, really try to keep up with them. But I'm more focused on my modern content now and replying to those. Honestly, smiley face. I know it sounds like it doesn't have a lot of substance, but if sometimes I can't understand what people are trying to say, or they're just like, cool, say thanks. Give them a smiley face. Do a little heart hands emoji. Reply to them in some way that shows that you are acknowledging thumbs up. Honestly, that makes a world of difference. Think about your favorite YouTuber or your favorite streamer. Or you think of somebody that you view in a if you commented on one of their posts, and even if they replied with a liking of the post or a thumbs up or a smiley face, you might feel kind of ecstatic. You might be like, oh my God, they saw my comment. That's the same kind of energy that you need to be bringing to the function of just replying to people in that sense. Someone said, I have a YouTube channel about game dev, focused on programming. I tried to cut the long tutorial to small clips. While it performs well on YouTube Shorts, 10K around, but on TikTok it gets 0 views. What is wrong with my video? Well, might not necessarily be something wrong with your video. It could be how you're pushing your video. Take a good look at your hashtags. Your hashtags might be relevant to your video, but are they relevant to what other people are searching right now? Make sure you look up what other people who post tutorials are using. Honestly, study from other people. I do that all the time when I go to post. I look up posts that are similar to mine and I see what hashtags they use. And I'm like, well, I'm going to use those hashtags. I have no problem ganking those for myself. Um, TikTok also has filters. So if they deem a video too low quality or if it's not oriented right, especially consider that YouTube videos, if you're doing long tutorials, they might be made for a different resolution screen or they might be oriented horizontal versus vertical. Trying to fit horizontal videos onto TikTok do not always go well. Sometimes the algorithm deems that that makes them low quality and won't push those videos. Um, Someone said share your channel. I will post mine at the end. And then also anybody else should definitely post theirs. Definitely network your channel. Talk about it when you have the chance, when you're in communities like this. Post stuff. It's fun. It's how you get people interested. Uh, Drew asks, on Pelican Post, we've been running the gnome hunt. I'm already intrigued. At events we've gone to for the past year, kind of quantifiable retention. Is that a goal worth pursuing, or do things like this primarily serve retention with existing audiences? May I ask what the gnome hunt is? All right, it's a scavenger hunt or a stamp rally for context. Okay, understandable. Um, yeah, I think something like that is really good at events. Thinking about this one a little bit because it doesn't necessarily translate to online, but it could. Do you work that in very significantly with your social media? My thought initially is hiding things like gnomes in your posts that like lead to a code that if someone puts it together, they get to redeem a Steam key or something like that, where it gets people talking about it, gets people working together. Um, Things like that I think are pretty cool. I tend to be attracted to games and things that do that sort of scavenger hunt. But I think using that in person is pretty nice, but you've got to definitely read the vibes of the event that you're at because some people are just there to, sit there, play their games, and get done with their day. They don't necessarily have that much time to spend on one game or searching around for stuff outside of what they've come to do, which is play games. Um, but I definitely think it's a unique idea. I would consider it a goal worth pursuing. Um, I think it would be great for retention, but honestly, I would put that in the where that is intriguing. The same way where I read Gnome Hunt and was intrigued, I do think that can pull people in because it is something unique and something different. So I would not say that that's not worth pursuing. I would say go for that and just explore different ways of getting that across to people. Sander asks, if you're going to a large in-person event and you're anticipating getting a decent amount of new eyes on your account in a short time, what's the best way to prepare for that posting wise? Post going into it. Have something recent posted before you get to the event. Honestly, the few weeks prior, you should be more active than even normal. If you're already not a very active person, try to get active. If you have a schedule, stick to your schedule. This is not the time to. You should be going in with a consistency that gives the impression that you are sturdy in what you are doing. Um, that gives it a little bit of time for it to generate its hype, but it also means that when someone's at an event and they look at your account, the last thing that they see isn't from like 2 years ago. That does not make someone want to follow you. That does not make someone want to look into your project dead. Even if you are there at an event, it looks like you're not really actively taking care of updates with it. Um, what would someone be following for if you're not posting? You know, that number is arbitrary and doesn't do anything if they're not receiving posts about the thing that they want to be seeing by following you. So by having recent posts, it shows them that the kind of content that they will be getting if they follow you. And it should be also giving them an idea of the frequency that they should be expecting. So if you're someone who posts 9 times a day, that's for followers to know because they may not vibe with that. But the post can be something about the event you're going to. It could be general. I would definitely post after the event, thanking people for playing the game, giving some highlight recaps, playtesting feedback, whatever it may be. Sandwich events with posts. That's usually when you're gonna get a lot of traffic and eyes on your account. Make sure you're ready for it. I believe that is all the questions for this section. This last bit will be pretty brief, and then we can open it up to general in case there's any questions that we might have missed or people are still typing out or anything like that. Let's focus on return. Or how to turn those fans into consumers who pay for your product or your game or whatever it is that you're trying to promote. My first point does say, in this economy, because first and foremost, the economy is not great right now in most parts of the world. People do not have a whole ton of disposable income, and that includes those of us games for a living. Yes, you need to make a profit off of this product. You also have to consider that people don't have a ton of budget to spend right now. So if you're going to be asking money of them, it should be worth it. And you have to be able to prove to them that it is worth it. Your social media is one of the best ways for you to be able to prove that. You should lean into unique character designs or gameplay or soundtracks or anything that tends to permeate those fans' faces online and make people drawn to the individualistic nature of your product. Think about alternatives where if people can't afford to support your game for $40 on Kickstarter, they could buy a $5 sticker instead. It still keeps people interested, it keeps people thinking about your game and feeling rewarded for their support. Visiting a concept from earlier, we talked about fan snatching versus conversion. Use that to your advantage in the return category. Hey, did you enjoy Silksong? Looking for more content like that? We've got a very similar game at a similar price point. Use it to seal the deal with your fans and get them to commit purchases that they've already justified in their mind. So if they've already, used that equation, which you could see on the screen here might look a little confusing, but that X amount of dollars they spent on a game yielded them Y amount of enjoyment. If you can convince them that your X will yield the same or more Y, you've got to purchase Z. I know it's a little crude for a formula, but it works out logistically speaking. You can use sales to make that X even more appealing. The psychology behind sales and what it does to the human brain is incredibly interesting, but that would be a totally separate time to go down. But you should be using them. I know I personally, when I see a little sale tag on something, even if it's like 10, I'm slightly in the thing that I may otherwise be. Um, but use that to your advantage. Make sure that your product has a fair price point on it. Don't be afraid to ask your fans or your community, like, hey, what do you think of the price point? Especially people who have played your games. If you're not asking your playtesters how much they would pay for this, you're missing an opportunity. You should definitely be, at least in these early stages, figuring out what your product is worth. Um, Typically, in situations like this, it is easier to build a community before you start making profit from your game. If you have something solid surrounding your game, it will make it easier to justify a purchase. Um, I know personally for me, I get pulled into games by my friends all the time. I'm sure many people in the chat can say the same. Like recently, Peak. I had not heard of Peak. I had not seen posts for Peak. I somehow managed to completely avoid all of my For You pages. But my friend texted me and was like, "We need to play Peak. I don't know how you haven't seen it. We're gonna play it. You need to get it. It's on sale right now. Go play Peak." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, yep." Getting brought into this by friends. So if you can manage to get people to like your game, that will then turn into more profit. I know that's pretty basic, but so many people manage to skip that step. We're right out the gate with players. Here's my game, $15. But you have nobody to vouch for your game. You have no community surrounding your game. Who am I going to play with if I play it? Who am I going to talk to about your game if I play it? It's good to have a little bit of a cushioning of a community before you start introducing that fund, because it then provides that sense of stability that you get, the same kind of psychological stability you get from looking at a page and instantly posting, you get from opening a Discord and seeing that it's active and people are talking about this game and that people are interacting with it. So that is the last bit I have for yapping. I do want to open the floor for any other questions. I do have a QR code for contacting me that leads to my email, my LinkedIn, and my TikTok account. But I figured that people might have some more individual questions at the end here, so I wanted to leave some time to open the floor for that.